Last time on the FXNT Modpack, I made a steam power station. I also made a basement workshop, and I built a big, beautiful locomotive engine to pull my train of mobile farms, which currently has nowhere to go. So today I want to be traveling to the next area to make a lumber mill, as well as getting some decent enchantments on my armor and tools. And for that, I'm going to need villagers. And I don't mean the villagers that I've got trapped in this little building over here, because these are just for selling crops too, and buying ender pearls. I want new villagers, with a new place for them to live. But before we get carried away with villagers and tools and enchantments and things like that, I need to get this track all the way over to where we're going to be building that lumberyard. And to do that, I'm going to take a leaf out of Chosen Architect's book and build a machine to help me. You see, in order to lay the track to where I want to go, which is basically in that direction, I could dig out a whole bunch of terrain to get it nice and smooth and flat, rather than the track going up and down all of the hills and making it a bit bumpy and weird looking. But on the Just Create SMP, Chosen Architect told me there was a different way, and that is basically to pile up a bit above where your track goes and start laying down your track in the sky. In the sky? Yep, up here in the sky. And the Y level I'm at here is 79. So as long as I lay the rest of my track at level 79, I can then build a contraption that runs along this track, digging out the land where I want my actual track to go below. And that way it will get rid of all of the trees and all of the grass that's in the way and all of the things that get in the way, and I'll have a nice smooth track all the way to my new destination. How hard could it be? What could possibly go wrong? It's too far away. Oh. Okay, we'll go this way a little bit, and we'll have one in between. Here. So now if I put that track there, assuming I've got it in a straight line, which I haven't, it's not far off. That's better. And then I'm going to go over to the next post that I've placed and do exactly the same thing. And I think that needs to go around about there. There we go. Nice bit of straight track. Excellent. And now, obviously, if we carry on straight, we're going to be in the river, and we don't want to go in the river, so we're going to go this way a bit. So let's come over to here, build up another little tower, make it a bit bigger so I've got room to actually place some blocks, and then try and get a nice curve. Now, I actually want this going around the corner here, so I don't really want the curve to be like that. All right, I'll tell you what we'll do. We'll go this way a bit. That go over the... It did go over the water a bit, but we can fix that. And now we've got that there. Then we can go over to this one over here. Around about there, I think, should do it. And then we'll get that one. And I'm just going to continue this till I get to where I want to go, which for now is basically just around about here, which really isn't that far away from where we started, but we've got a decent length of train track now. We've got a nice straight bit here ready for another station and a lumber mill inside of this forest. And don't worry about the mess, this elevated track is temporary. It's just going to be here to help me build the actual track, which is going to be below it. But in order to do that, I'm going to have to make a machine that's going to build that track for me. And whilst that machine's not going to actually place any track, it is going to clear the way. And for this contraption, I'm going to need a whole bunch of rollers, which means I need a whole bunch of crushing wheels. So I'm currently just crafting those up on my mechanical crafter. And hopefully 24 will be enough. And for that, I can turn these into the mechanical rollers. For now, I'm going to make 16 of them and see how we get on. I've already got one, so technically we've got 17. So in order to build this contraption, I'm going to need to make a train. So first of all, I'm going to pop a station down on top of there and just chuck that down here for now and put that into create new train. I'm going to fly back up there and stick a train casing down. Then I'm just going to build some blocks around this so that I can get underneath it. I'm going to throw myself some train controls down and a seat, and then replace these with a bunch of barrels. Now I'm going to add 3 lots of contraption controls, and these are going to have rollers and drills and saws on. And that's going to allow me to turn off the rollers, the drills and the saws when I want to. Not that this thing has got any rollers, drills and saws yet, so I guess that's next. So bringing this post down all the way to the bottom so it meets up with the level we actually want our track at. I'm regretting building this where it is, because really I need it where there isn't any track. Tell you what, I've got a plan. Let's get rid of all of that. Let's glue all of this together that we've already added on. Assembled the train. And now I'm going to get on it and just move it to beyond where I've already got track. Then I need to move the station so it's back in front of where the train is. Keep it out of the way for now. Get back on my train and just approach the station, clicking disassemble train. So now that we're back at this point here, what I need to do is start adding in some rollers. And these particular rollers are going to be filling in any holes in the terrain with dirt. So when our track goes over the edge of these big craters here, it's going to fill them in and not just have floating landscape along the river's edge. And that should be plenty for that. The other rollers, which I'm not sure I've got enough of now, I'm actually going to place behind these. And these rollers are going to be for placing gravel down on the track, because then it'll look nice. But yes, I've run out of rollers. Let's just craft a couple more of those. We want this just extending past the track, 1 block on each side. I'm going to set those to gravel, and those just want to be on clear blocks and pave. That's going to get rid of the dirt. And these ones want to be on sloped fill below to make the terrain look more natural. And that's going to apply that to all of the ones in a row that's connected. But these rollers are only going to deal with the blocks immediately in front of them. They're not going to deal with the trees and the blocks that are higher up. So that's why I've got a whole bunch of drills and saws. So coming out from roughly the middle of this train here, I'm now going to build a big old wall of drills, just like my tunnel bore. And I think that should be high enough to basically clear out anything that's going to be at this level. I don't think there's much terrain that's higher than that. And now what I'm going to do is add a layer of saws above those drills, so if we come across any trees that are taller than my drills, this row should cut the rest of them down. Or at least I hope it will. If not, we'll have a little bit of tidying up to do at the end, but that should be absolutely fine. So now effectively we've got a machine that is going to destroy the terrain, roll the edges in case there's any holes, fill the track area with gravel, and chop down the trees. So let's just get it all glued together and see if it works. Let's just throw a whole line of barrels down here as well for good measure. Now these barrels I want to fill with as much gravel as I can, which is going to be tricky because I don't have much gravel. I need to go get more gravel. I guess I'm not going to get more gravel. I was going to crush down a bunch of cobblestone into gravel, but apparently I've got neither. Really do with a decent cobblestone generator, and not just the one on my train, because this is for my train and not for me to be pinching from. But have we got any cobble in there? Not really. Okay, fine. Well, let's hope that little bit of gravel's going to be enough for now then. So now that that's all sorted out, what I can do is assemble this train, hop myself onto the seat, and start driving. Oh, geez. Are we ready? I want to be able to get a good angle on it. Here we go. Oh, and I've left half of it behind. Oh, geez. Disassemble, reassemble, and let's go. Here we go. We're all going together now. We are leaving gravel where the track goes, and we are creating an area where the train goes, although I kind of wish my rollers were another block wider at the back. And we might get away with that, but it does feel a bit thin. But you get the idea of what we're going to be achieving with this at least. And there we go. It might be a little bit overkill, but that should do everything I want it to do. So now all I got to do is just run that to the end of my new track. Let's do this. Well, that wasn't too bad. We have run out of gravel, quite a long way down the track, but we do need to finish that off. But most of it doesn't look too bad. We've got some cleaning up to do in terms of getting rid of some of the stumps that have been left behind. And of course, there are some areas where the terrain doesn't really look all that great, so I've got that to fix. And of course, I've got to lay the track on this as well. But before we do that, it's time to go get some cobblestone so that I can make some more gravel so that I can actually finish the track. But yeah, like bits like this just need sorting out. A little bit of manual dirt placing and they'll all look lovely. Before I can throw my tunnel board down the mines to get cobblestone, though, I am going to have to amend it slightly, and that is because it's currently set up to eject as much cobblestone as it can get. I don't want it to do that at the moment because I need the cobblestone, so I'm just going to turn that round to stop it from doing that, and then I can turn that back into a contraption. And now that's ready to go. And I think a good place to get all of this cobblestone from will be back at the top of this hill where I've already made a big old hole in the side of the mountain. So let's just throw a few bits of track down there, throw down my tunnel bore, and then just let it go along here for a few minutes. And there we go. Now I've got plenty of gravel in this chest, and that's not all of it. I've already filled 2 of the barrels on the track maker with gravel already, so we can just go along this thing again and fill in everything I missed, and then do all of the tidying up and the fixing it all and making it look nice. So I'm gonna be a couple of minutes. Well, that took a little bit longer than a few minutes. Jeez, but we've now got a fully filled in station with lots of gravel, and we've got this dirty gravel stuff, and it goes all the way over to there where we've got that little track making machine that I used. And that machine was just to lay down fences, lay down gravel, put the dirty gravel down, and basically finish everything off. I've also gone around putting lanterns the entire way down the track, all the way to the other station. And for this entire time, my train has been generating many materials, although it's been generating a lot more gold than iron, and that's because I've been using all of the gravel for sand, mainly because I need a lot of gold, because I'm so gold poor. But not anymore. If we go and check the gold card, check this out. In this ender chest, we have many gold, and then it's all coming in from there as well. Jeez. Oh, gold for days. And obviously we've got a whole bunch of quartz as well, and over here we've got another reasonable amount of iron coming through. But that's not all the iron, because don't forget, my original iron farm is still running, and this hasn't been starved of gravel, so this has now got in it another 143 blocks of iron. I'm never going to want for iron again. Well, I'll probably run out of all of this iron and gold pretty swiftly, especially considering I've now got to make another one of these generators and electric-y stationy bits over at the other station. Because, of course, when we drive our train to our next location, we still want our train to be able to produce things. So before I can even start building lumber yards and all that sort of stuff, I've still got a whole bunch of work to do. But before we do that, let's just pack everything up. Let's press the right button to suck away the stuff. Now we'll turn the train back into a train. Still doesn't have a name. And yes, I've had a lot of comments about that, and the names of my dogs and horse as well. But I'm not sure I'm going to go with any of your comments for the name of the train, because I've had my own ideas. But we'll get to that a little bit later in the video, because right now we're going to drive off to our new station and see if it's long enough to actually park this thing at. And here we are arriving at our new destination, and I've got a feeling this platform's already not going to be long enough. Oh, we've probably got room, I'd say, for another maybe 3 carriages before we end up on the corner, but it does look like we've got just about enough room to put in a lay-by and get this thing up and running. So I guess that's what I'm going to be doing next. And in order to rebuild this over at our new station, I think we're going to need a couple of schematics. That's going to make life nice and easy. It makes sense to have one of this entire lay-by. So let's just start over there and run all the way to over here where it joins back in again. And I don't think it's called a lay-by with trains. It's probably called a siding, if I remember correctly, from Thomas the Tank, which is my only reference for trains and engines. So we'll call that station siding, and then I need a schematic of the actual power station. So let's grab that bit there, bring this all the way over to this one over here, and then we'll just make that nice and big so everything in here is fully encompassed, and we'll call that station power. Save that, come to the house, pop down the schematic cannon, put down a table, pop that in there. Then we're going to go on, I guess, station siding first. We'll add that to this schematic, throw that down in the world somewhere. It doesn't matter where it is, but why is there no gravel in it? Oh, it has, it's fine. Throw that into there. And get my material checklist, throw that into there, and now we can see exactly what we need. In order to get the dirty gravel, all we need to do is come to our mason tables, throw some gravel in there, click on dirty gravel, and just craft all, and that should sort that out. Train track I've got a whole bunch of here in this backpack, so let's just chuck a whole bunch of that into there. And then I just need to go through all of these things, craft them up, and chuck them in the backpack. One of the things I need a lot of for this rail is spruce fences, and I've hardly got any spruce fence. But fortunately, because I thought ahead, I actually swapped out the oak from my tree farm into spruce, so that it's going to start chopping that down now, which is good. So that means in here, yes, we're starting to generate a whole bunch of spruce, which is fantastic, and a whole bunch of saplings as well, which is very useful because I'm turning all of these saplings into bone meal over time. Just inside of this barrel here, I throw those in there. They get forced into our storage system, they get forced into a composter, and then it comes back up here as bone meal. Oh, and while I'm here, these villagers, I asked in the last name if you knew the reference for their names. We've got Walter, Peter, Olivia, and Astrid, and of course that's from the TV series Fringe, one of my favorites. It's pretty old now, but I've just about finished rewatching the entire thing again, so it's in my mind, and as a result I kind of wanted to name the other things related to that, and I thought by giving that hint, the name suggestions I got for my wolves and my horse and my train might be related, but they're not. I got names like FoxyNoTail and WolfyNoTail and DoggyNoTail. Thank you. So looking at the checklist, we've ticked everything off, so that's absolutely everything I need just to make the station siding. But now what I'm going to do is fill that backpack with all the things I need for the power station as well. So I need to get the schematic back out, throw it back on the table. This time add on station power instead. Throw that down randomly and then put that in the cannon. Then ideally, so I don't get confused, what I should do is move this backpack away and start filling up a chest instead. And that way, when I get my checklist back, I know the things that are on here are not already covered by the things in there, and then we can just use that to store them all once I've gathered them. And a little while later, we've now got everything on the list except for one ender tank, and that's all of that in there. We've got one, we just need one more. And the reason I've got no more of those is because yet again, I'm out of obsidian. So I think it's time I set up a very small free obsidian machine. Free obsidian? Yep, free obsidian, mate. And for that, I'm actually going to need that tank, as well as some pipe and a couple of pumps, a drill, and a couple of chutes. And with these things, I should be able to make infinite obsidian, albeit quite slowly. But where am I going to make it? I don't really want to make it in the middle of this room because it'll take up quite a lot of space. And obviously downstairs in the basement is pretty full. Through here is also pretty full. So I think what I'm going to do is actually build this through here where our blaze burner farm spawner thing is. And there we go, yet again, just a few minutes later, we've got a much bigger basement, which is a little bit tidier. I can still AFK over here and get my blaze rods and my nuggets of experience. And over here, we've now got an obsidian generator, which is simpler than I thought, because I thought I'd keep having to pump water into it, but I don't. All I need is a waterlogged leaf block. Next to that, we're pumping lava into it from our infinite lava source in the nether. And then there's just a drill behind that, which mines through the obsidian, which goes through here and into the barrel at the bottom, which is fantastic. So yeah, little obsidian generator, much smaller than I thought it would be, and now I can craft all the things I need. There we go. We now have 2 more ender tanks. I'm going to throw those into that chest, check my little list and make sure I've got everything I need, which I do. So now I can shove all of that stuff into that backpack, and then we've got everything we need for both of the schematics. So back over at the other station then, we need to figure out where we're going to have this siding. So first of all, I need to place it, then I need to rotate it, and then I need to decide where we're going to have it. And I don't think there's enough room really this side of the track for it, so we're probably going to go over onto that side, which means it needs spinning round, dropping down a block, and then we need to make sure it's actually going to be in a good position for our train, so we've got plenty of room for it to fit in there. And I think we're not actually far off there. The power in for our train sections is here, and the power there is there. So yeah, that would actually just about fit there. So let's drop down the schematic cannon, make sure it's not in the way of anything, which it's not. Give it a bit of gunpowder, give it the schematic. And now what I need to do is actually replace solid with empty, because currently this schematic is going to be in the place where there's a whole bunch of trees and things, and we don't want those being in the way of our power system. So by doing that, it should delete anything that's in its way. So there's no time like the present. Let's go. And there you go, you can see the grass being removed as it places down the track. And now that it's placed that track down, I can actually come across here and actually start connecting it to our other track. And there we go, with a little bit of jiggery pokery, we've now got that end of the track connected, and all of that is in place. There's a bit of tidying up to do with the trees to make them look a bit nicer and not like they've been half cut off. And of course, this little bit down here needs sorting out as well. I also need to extend everything over at that direction to be able to bring this track back to those ones, but I'll deal with that later, because right now, I want to put the power station down. And there we go, the schematic cannon's finished. I've cleaned up a little bit of the area around it to stop those weird looking trees being quite so weird, and now I just need to finish this. I see you. Finish this off by adding the water and bits of connections into it. Bits of connections? Yeah, the bits of connections, that's what it needs. And I believe that means we're now good to go. The only thing I need to do is make sure that our lava tanks are using the right color code. And a bunch of you in the comments told me that I don't even need pumps for these lava tanks. So in the last episode, I was a little bit confused as to what this does on the front of these tanks. And a bunch of you in the comments told me that that makes it push the lava out into something that can receive lava, like a pipe. So if I get rid of this just as a test, and just pop it somewhere we can actually access it, I'm going to grab a pipe, pump, and a tank and put them around this thing. And then I'm going to flick that the other way around. Oh, and the tank can take it out. Okay. But as you can see, the pipe cannot. So let's remove that and that and that, and put the tank there and then put the pipe there. And let's see if that'll do it again. No, so it can't push into a pipe, but it can push into a tank. So I wonder if it can pump into a steam engine. But of course, back over at our new power station, that's not going to help me much because the lava needs to go into the blaze burners, not into that. So even if I could pump it directly into the blaze burners from that, I'd need 9 of them, which is pointless when I can just use one pump to do the same thing. So here we go. The train is now up and running at our new station. It's all disassembled and producing all of the good things, and the power station is running nicely. And that means I've got no excuses other than to start making the things I want to make in this area. And there's a few of them. As I mentioned earlier, I want to turn this area into a lumberyard, generating all of the different wood types for me without me having to go around the world every now and then with my chainsaw chopping them all down. That's a relatively simple thing to do, but it will take up a reasonable amount of space. And of course, I want to fully automate it. As I also mentioned, the other thing I want here are villagers. I want a whole library of villagers so that I can actually get my tools and armor enchanted in a better way. But they're not the only things I want here, because I also want a quarry. That's right, a quarry. I want another structure in this area that's not only going to be generating cobblestone for me, but also andesite and potentially diorite and granite as well. And that's all achievable because we've got plenty of space, a big old area, but we're going to obviously start with the lumberyard, which is probably going to take up most of this space here. And I have made quite a few lumberyards in the past, ranging from the simple spinny tree thing that we've got over in the other area, all the way up to a giant big spinny tree thing over a guardian farm that I did on Just Create. So this time I'd quite like to do things a little bit differently. Now in Create, there's a whole bunch of different ways you can make tree farms, but if you look at them all closely, they're all exactly the same, because the method of cutting down a tree involves a saw and a deployer. The deployer plants the saplings, the saw cuts the trees down. Now you can have a self-powered one of these on a windmill, you can have one bouncing backwards and forwards on a minecart, again using no power. If you want to use power, you could use a gantry with a sequence gear shift, or you could even build one on a train and have it going bouncing back and forwards from station to station. But each one of these is exactly the same. There's a saw to chop down the tree and a deployer to replant the sapling. They're not particularly interesting, and I've made different versions of each one of those in the past. Of course, you can have a different number of saws, a different number of deployers. You could even have your track going round in a circle, or you could create a big old arm that stretches for miles. But in reality, every single tree farm made in Create is exactly the same. And honestly, I don't know how I'm going to get away from that, really. The only way of making this any different would be to, instead of moving the contraption that chops down the tree, would be to move the tree, which is a little bit like what happens when you make a vanilla tree farm with TNT. You have some pistons, you have a dispenser full of bone meal, and then you just activate that dispenser, stand somewhere nearby, planting your saplings, hope that they grow in time for the pistons to actually extend, and then the pistons will extend eventually, pushing the tree along, and then you can plant the next one, and the next one, and the next one, and eventually you end up with a big old line of trees. And if you're really smart, you can end up with a big old block of trees. And once you've got all of your big old block of trees, you then just drop some TNT on it that you've cheated into the world using a TNT duplicator to destroy it all. And then have all of the blocks that get destroyed fall into some water, and then you just collect them. But that's not what we're building today. I don't want to build a vanilla tree farm. A, they're too complicated, and B, well, it just sounds like hard work. Why would I when I have Create? So the first thing that comes to mind is to use the Create Mechanical Piston to make pushing our trees a little bit simpler. What I've got here is a sticky mechanical piston with a sequence gear shift, which is being activated every 5 seconds. All that's doing is pushing this glued together block of blocks over the top of these saplings, in the case that maybe one of them grows into a tree, and then that's going to get pushed. Although when it gets pushed, apparently it destroys all of my saplings because it turns into actual blocks when it does that, which is not ideal. Well, I guess that's not going to work very well then. However, of course, it would work if we were just working with one sapling. Then it would actually be pretty easy to sort out a system that would automatically push our tree across, because the only time it's going to get pushed across is if that turns into a tree. Then, of course, we'd need a deployer sat somewhere to actually plant the trees on the grass block. And then once we'd gathered our logs over at some area, we'd need a saw to actually chop them all down. So let's just see how this works. Now, of course, we could add a dispenser in as well to grow these trees a bit quicker. But for now, let's just do this. That's going to push those across there and they're going to get broken, meaning that our saw is stationary. And so is our deployer. Okay, let's perhaps try that again with a bigger wall, and this time a row of blocks up there to try and stop these things growing into giant trees. There we go. We've now got a tree that's not too big, and when this thing pushes it across, it gets pushed across. Excellent. Okay, let's plant another tree and grow this one. There we go. We've got another tree that's going to get pushed across. Lovely. Then we'll do another one, and then hopefully this will get pushed across as well and join up with those ones. Lovely, yep, and now that's going to saw the very bottom block. As you can see, it's not sawing any of these ones. So if we was to get rid of those and put that there, it would actually chop those down, but it didn't chop that one down because the wood wasn't connected. So realistically, what we'd probably have to have would be a whole range of saws up here. Alternatively, we'd need a way to get rid of all of the bottom blocks of the trees that we don't want to cut, just leaving one that we do want to cut, which is getting a little bit complicated because realistically, we don't need any of this stuff. We don't need this piston system here, because the simplest tree farm we can make is literally just a grass block with a saw next to it, a deployer to plant our saplings, and then we can either just wait for the natural growth of that tree, or we can bone meal it, and then we've got a tree farm with no moving parts at all. Very simple. But where this becomes a problem are for different types of trees. For any tree that will grow as a single log, this will work fine. And that means we can do pretty much most of the different tree types. But two trees in particular that we're going to struggle with on this will be dark oak and pale oak, because the saw's only going to get the corner block of this rather than the other blocks. And that means it won't chop the tree down. And that's easy enough, because all we need are 2 saws there and then 2 saws on the other side, and then we can chop down any type of tree, except for mangrove. Mangrove is going to be very difficult for this, because whilst the mangrove tree probably will grow on this dirt block, we're nowhere near any of the wood in order to chop it down once it grows, because mangrove trees grow in a very strange and awkward way. That means with this system we actually have 8 different tree types that we can farm very easily. And the advantage of a stationary system rather than a moving system is not only the performance increase, i.e. the world's not having to process a whole bunch of contraptions going backwards and forwards, but it's also the automatability of it. It makes it a lot easier to turn off and turn on farms that we don't want running, i.e. if we've got too much dark oak, we can very easily just turn off the dark oak part of this, whereas if we had one of these with a big long arm on it with lots of saws doing all of the different tree types, once we're overstocking in one of the tree types, we're either going to have to void them off, which means we're just wasting all of that processing power getting them in the first place, or we end up with a whole bunch of sapling sticks and potentially apples all over the floor. So this system does have its advantages, unless you want mangrove. Mangrove's not very good. But then we could just have one spinny roundy thing for mangrove and that would solve all of our problems. Because what I didn't point out with mangrove is you don't actually have to saw down the wood block. You don't need that block at all. With mangrove, all you need to do is saw down one of the legs, and it gets the whole tree, even if there's more than one leg touching the floor. So this could be modified for mangrove quite easily, but then we'd need an awful lot of saws. And this is what a system might look like for our 2x2 trees. We've got saws on either side to get all of the bottom blocks. We've got our dirt, we've got our saplings underneath that. We've got some deployers that are pushing the saplings up onto the dirt. Below that, we've got a couple of chutes coming down onto this belt with a tunnel with some saplings in its barrel. The saplings come out of there, they get split between the tunnels, they go through here and they go up into the first set of deployers, and then where they're full, they'll go up into the back set of deployers. Now all we got to do is wait for those saplings to grow, they'll get chopped down, and that's where we've now got a massive problem, because this system doesn't have any way of collecting the blocks. And that means once the tree's grown and it gets chopped down, the bits just go absolutely everywhere. But there is a solution to this, but it's not very create. The simplest solution as part of my mod pack would be to throw down a backpack. In that backpack, we can put some upgrades to allow us to have lots of items in there, and then we just stick a magnet upgrade in there. And then all of the items in the surrounding area will go into it. And now when we grow these trees and they get chopped down... Oh, look. There's no items anywhere. Well, there's a couple. Don't worry about those. Most of them have got into here. We've lost a few. And the way we could get the saplings back into the system is simply with a smart chute. We would put a smart chute on that barrel there, a sapling filter on there, keep the backpack on top of that there, and now it's going to filter all of the saplings out and refeed the system, and then when the trees grow, it's going to grab everything else. I say everything else. Doesn't quite get everything, but most of the stuff did fall towards it, so that time it actually got quite a lot. But if the tree falls the other way, the backpack's not going to get it all. So it's not ideal. However, that old piston design we had before, I think we can still use that and make this thing a whole bunch better. So with a little bit of modification, we've now got a system that collects the stuff as well. We've now only got 2 saws and a barrel attached to this sticky mechanical piston. That's a little contraption. We've got a sequence gear shift controlling that, which is controlled by this redstone, which is attached to a smart observer, which is only looking for dark oak logs. That will fire its redstone, activating that, which will chop down the tree. Everything will go in the barrel, and then the saplings will eventually then come down this chute all the way down here and go into the system. So let's grow the tree. The system immediately kicks in. Now we are running at slow speed, so it's taken a while to actually cut these things down, but there we go. It's cut those down. Now it's going to come back. The saplings are going to go down there and back into the system. So all we got to do is get our logs, apples, and sticks out of that barrel and put them into a storage system. Easy. And you may have noticed in that demonstration a few saplings ended up going all over the place. And that's because I forgot to set this to place only in starting position. When it's set to that, it won't become an actual set of blocks when it's over here, which means it won't kill any of the saplings which have been pushed through by the deployers. It'll wait until it's all the way back to where it lives before it becomes real, and then it will drop the items off. So there we go. We've created a tree farm with a moving saw on it, just like all the rest. Oh, jeez. Before I decide on exactly which tree farm I want to build, let's take a trip down memory lane. This was my very first Create world. Well, this is a small part of it, and over in the distance, beyond this mountain over here, I have a tree farm. And this monorail was fetching all of the logs from my tree farm over to my main area. And this tree farm, as you can see, consists of both the spinny roundy tree types as well as these big old trains that basically do things like chopping down mangrove and the other tree types that we had on this server. Then a little bit later on in the series, as I moved to my final area, I built another tree farm in this big old city here right inside of this building. This tree farm actually has the ability to farm every different type of tree that is a single white tree just by clicking a button, which then changed which saplings would go into the machine, changing which tree was grown. And then all we got here is a little contraption with a saw on it, chopping down the tree, and a big wall of harvesters to get all of the leaves for me. And as a result of that, I was able to get all of these different types of woods, because in this mod pack there was no pale oak, and dark oak trees were able to grow as single-sized trees, not just doubles. And it also allowed me to get fungus and mushrooms, which was quite nice. Although the system behind it was relatively complicated, and yeah, it's not the easiest thing in the world to set up, but it worked, and it generated an awful lot of wood. Then on my second series, yet again, I had a couple more different types of tree farm. This tiny little contraption here pretty much kept me in oak logs, and therefore pretty much everything I wanted to make for the entire series. What it didn't do, however, was give me a great deal of different wood types for different types of decoration, which meant that when I moved to my second area, I had to build a completely new new one. And I built that inside of my little mine shaft. And this tree farm yet again is completely different. This time it could do 2 single log saplings as well as 1 double one. And it's very similar to the one I've just showed in my creative world, using deployers to plant the saplings, and then we've just got, instead of pistons pushing the saws backwards and forwards, they're just on little mine carts. And again, this created an awful lot of trees, and it was pretty easy to switch out between different tree types. All I had to do was change what the observer was looking for, and then just empty out the filters on these deployers to put different types of saplings in. So that worked pretty well as well. Then more recently on the Just Create SMP, I built this tree farm, which is by far the most successful tree farm I've ever built. And when I say successful, I mean it just generated a ridiculous amount of wood. Way too much wood, in fact. It wasn't actually running for all that long before my massive storage system became completely full. And I thought this would be a good idea on a multiplayer server, because then I'd be able to sell that wood and get rich. However, as it turned out, I happened to build this at exactly the wrong time, just as other people had built their wood farms and missed out on the market. And whilst this type of tree farm is probably the easiest one I've built in terms of the farm itself, not actually laying out all of the saplings and creating this behemoth of a mess, the biggest problem was the storage system. I had so many massive vaults holding all of this different wood, and even with all of those, it was still always full. And now that we've seen all of those, I'm still not 100% sure which one I want to build. Because on this world, there's only me here. I don't need a massive farm that's going to be creating wood for all of the different players and to open shops with it. I just need enough for me. I would like it to be able to produce a range of different tree types, ideally, so that I've got all of the different woods for decorating and whatnot, but it doesn't need to be overly complicated. So which one should I go for? What about this tree farm? I have come up with a brand new design, which is a sort of amalgamation of all the other ones we've looked at. Currently, this is just for the saplings that do single wide trees rather than the doubles or the mangrove, but this should work pretty well. We've got our saws stuck to these pistons, which are also stuck to these barrels. We've got a bit of dirt in front of them with a sapling and a deployer underneath pushing the saplings up, and then we've got a few different things going on. Underneath the pistons, we have sequence gear shifts, basically saying once the observer that's looking for a log sees a log, it's going to send a redstone signal activating the gear shift, which is going to make it chop down the tree. The items will all then go in that barrel, and of course we need the saplings to go back into the deployer. So this inventory access port from Create Connected can actually take the items from the side of that barrel, send them through this chute, which is filtered for those saplings through this hopper and back into the deployer underneath. So we're recycling all of the saplings, and we're doing that for every single tree type. And now directly under the barrel, we have another smart chute. This time the filter is to not let any of the saplings through. That means all of the wood and sticks and apples or anything else we get goes straight down these chutes and into these ender chests. Now, in the actual world, we won't have all of these ridiculously big chute systems down here. We'll just lightly eject these onto a conveyor, send them out into a storage system. But for the sake of testing, I wanted to be able to quickly look in here and see what we were getting. Now, because this system is compact, i.e. the saplings are close together, sometimes when the trees grow, they will attach to each other. And that means one saw can saw down a completely different type of tree, collecting the wrong type of saplings. That means that we can actually end up with saplings in here and not just logs, but that doesn't matter because overall, enough saplings go into each of the deployers to keep this thing running forever. And if I just sit back and watch this for a second, you can see it works perfectly. What it doesn't do, however, is get any leaves, but we can sort that out later. We can have a set of harvesters just periodically running across backwards and forwards over the tops of all the trees, collecting as many of the leaves as we need. So that's not a problem, that's nice and easy, and this is surprisingly easy to build as well, despite having quite a few quite expensive things that I'm going to have to craft. As for the dark oak and the pale oak that require a 2x2 grid, we can just go back to something like this and have separate systems for those, and I'm sure I can come up with a more inventive way as filling up these deployers than having this big system like that. And as for the mangrove, well, that's easy, isn't it? We just make a new spinny machine that can go spinny on the mangrove. What's not quite so simple, however, is I've got to go and craft all of that stuff now. But good news for me, it's actually been a couple of days since I recorded my last clip. And that means this train has been running, generating many things. And if we look inside of my gold car, Not only is my chest filled with gold, but I've also got 26 blocks worth inside of there as well. And that's just my gold. My iron farm has got 220 gold blocks in there. Iron blocks. It's not got any gold blocks in my iron farm. And flying back to base to do all that crafting, I'm wondering how much iron's in my other iron farm. 187 blocks. I'll take it. Thank you very much. Many iron. Oh, this is good. Right, anyway, I've got some crafting to do. That wasn't too bad. It only took me half an hour and I'm back here ready to clear out an area to build this tree farm. And I'm thinking maybe sort of this area for the lumber yard might be a good place to do it. So the trees are gone and I've flattened out this little area here ready for our lumber yard. And I want to set this back a little bit because I want to have some sort of interesting features at the front near where the train line is. And I'm thinking we're going to have our first little module here. Obviously this will have some form of building around it in the future. And then I want to have another module that's exactly the same around about here that we're going to be using just to get leaves. So this one will be basically for wood and saplings. This one will be for wood and leaves, feeding off the saplings from that one. And then I've got space at the end there for having our two wide trees like the dark oak and the pale oak. I'm not considering mangrove at this point, only because I haven't really considered mangrove at this point. We'll probably add that in at the back somewhere out of the way. So for now, all I'm going to do is throw this into the cannon, give the cannon some gunpowder, make sure that everything on my list is fully ticked off, which it is, and then just check the backpack to show you that I've also added in here a bunch of storage drawer stuff so that I can build a storage system for this thing, because I've had even more ideas on how to improve it. So yeah, without further ado, let's blast this into existence. And it really won't take long at all, so there's absolutely no point in doing a replay for this, because by the time I finish this sentence, this thing's going to be finished. See? I didn't even have to speak slowly. Well, a bit. Now, I believe I crafted up enough things in here for 2 of these, so let's get the second one placed. And we want this to be roughly alongside the first one. Let's just rotate it round a little bit, lift it up a block, and just make sure it's in line. And I think that should be about enough. I don't want it too close because I do want to be able to add other mechanisms around this. So yeah, I think that should work absolutely fine. So let's throw that into the cannon, double check the clipboard, and yes, now we've got everything we need. So let's get the second one blasted into existence. And here it comes very, very quickly, just appearing in the world as if it just appeared in the world. Amazing. Well, it looks like we've got a tree grown already, and I haven't even started adjusting this thing yet, and none of it is powered, so it's not going to chop anything down. So I suppose the first thing I should probably do is get rid of all the saplings to prevent anything else from growing, because I've got a few changes to make. And the changes I'm going to make should dramatically simplify the entire thing, but they are going to require a different mod. Fortunately, it is one of the mods in this mod pack, so that's not too bad, but it does mean that this farm will no longer be able to be made with pure Create and Create Connected. Basically, the changes boil down to saplings, because there is a chance that one of these saws can chop down a tree that's not even connected to it. There's a chance it can pick up the wrong saplings, which means those saplings don't go into the right slot. They just end up in the storage system, and there they will stay forever. And obviously we want to maximize saplings, particularly if this one is just going to be for generating logs and saplings, and that one is generating leaves. This one's still going to be using saplings, so we need to create a surplus with this one. And in order to do that, instead of having these systems to take the saplings out of the barrel and put them back into the system, I'm just going to feed absolutely everything out to a storage system, and then use these ender chests from the ender storage mod to drop the right sapling for the right item back into this. Now that means each one of these is going to need one of those, and it doesn't need to go there. It can actually go directly above the hopper, meaning it's completely out of the way of everything else in the system. And that means we don't even need smart chutes. We can just use chutes to empty these things out, and that's going to be more efficient in terms of the resources it's going to cost me to build this. And you could argue, well, you've already built it and spent those resources, which is true, but if I reclaim them, I can use them on other things. So a little while later, and we've got a very temporary storage system sat out of the front of this thing. And I say it's temporary because by the time we've got a building and stuff on here, this is all going to move to be a little bit more, well, usable and not just right in the way of where we're building. But just so that I can see what's going on, this is what we've got. Each of our tree things now has the correct ender chest above the hopper, pushing the saplings into the deployer, and then the barrel items will just come through these chutes onto these conveyors, and they're going to come down here along the front and into this, assuming that it's got some funnels on it. That's going to send it into the storage system, and in the bottom row down here we're keeping all of the saplings, and they're getting fed out into the right ender chests. And then in this row over here we've got the logs, we've got the strip logs above those, which obviously we don't have a system in place to put those just yet. And above here we're going to have the leaves as well, which again we don't have a system for. And again, I haven't added any slots for the dark oak, the pale oak or the mangrove, because like I said, this is temporary. I just want to make sure everything works with the setup that we've got so far, and then later on we can adjust all of this to make it work properly. But it's not going to work without power. So my next job is to just connect our power station over to that and see if it actually works, I guess. And that just means digging down here a couple of blocks and going across pretty much in a straight line. And there we go. We've now got power coming all the way over to here. So all I'm going to do is plug this into a speed controller and just get it connected into this, just like that. Now, obviously we need to make sure everything's going to go in the right direction. And at the moment, we've only got one of these connected, which is intentional because I don't want everything running at once. By having this connected, it is going to start growing the saplings. I already see I need to actually connect these belts to these gearboxes because I've changed how all of this works. But the biggest thing I need to worry about right now is the direction that the sequence gear shifts are going to fire it. These are directional, and depending on the direction of power coming in will depend on which way these actually go. So I'm going to have to grab a log of each type and then just place those down and make sure they're actually going to work. So let's just get rid of that and put a log there. If that goes all the way through, then great. If not, then it doesn't work. Now, that didn't work because our speed's not going fast enough. So let's just go on maximum speed. Why not? And then just replace that with that. And that worked. That's great. What about the birch one? Is this going to work? It is. Wonderful. So let's connect this to the next one with the gearbox, which means it's going to go in the right direction. And now we can test our spruce. And as you can see, that didn't fire, and then it sort of jumped, which means it's backwards. So what I've got to do is come to this, flick those around, break the spruce log, and try again. And there we go. Now that's going to work. Good. And the cherry, which also works. Hurrah! So now we've got one tree farm complete. And there we go, both sides are fully set up and running. The only thing I've got to do now is add a few lights on this thing just so that things can grow even when it's nighttime. And of course, I don't want to place these lanterns on the things that are going to move. So I'm just going to throw those on top of these observers here and hope that doesn't affect the tree growth. But for now, this is what we've got. So all that's left to do is watch it go for a little while and just make sure it all works perfectly. And I suppose I could simulate that a little bit with some bone meal. Yes, that one went. Let's try a birch. You're going to grow for me, please, birch? Please grow. You're really not going to grow? There's nothing above you, mate. Acacia? Maybe it's the lanterns. Maybe they don't like the lanterns there. Let's move the lantern. Yep, they don't. Some of them don't like having lanterns there. All right, in that case then, let's move the lanterns and put them a little more out the way. Okay, let's bone meal a spruce. Out. Let's bone meal one of those. Yes, lovely. Let's bone meal a jungle. Lovely. Let's bone meal a cherry. Lovely. And these ones as well, I will assume, work exactly the same way. An oak. Yes. Birch. Yes. A spruce. Yes. An acacia. Yes. A jungle. Yes. And a cherry. Wonderful. And if we look closely, we can see that none of the things are going into the storage system because I haven't got a box for sticks. Let's remove that then. Chuck a box right in the middle and throw some sticks in there. And I guess we'll probably need one for apples as well. So let's do that down there. So now all I've got to do is just wait for these saplings to grow. That won't take too long, right?